The marker that anybody can use for the release of FUZZ was when the pandemic really hit, because we had set up this tour and all this stuff with Fig 4, the label overseas tour. We'd had plane tickets, all the dates booked for everything, like end of March. A couple weeks before, tours canceled, and the album was so far promoted and so in the pipe that it just had to come out, and we had to figure out how to make the best of putting out a record at a time when everyone was completely not into the new record that was coming out.
And for all of those reasons, I'm really excited to dig into it track by track today. Before we do, let's give Food House its due. Food House, the name of which of course references Mood House, is just off Lake and Lindale. New era Tex-Mex. You and Sean,
Yeah,
Black, are behind it, creating Tex-Mex meals specific to the El Paso region.
Yep, exactly.
If I were in Minneapolis, I would have been down there enjoying Hipster Death, which is now not just a song, but a meal. Thursdays and Fridays, 4 till 10 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays, 9 in the morning until 2 p.m. Is that right?
For now, yeah. We're the schedule's ever changing, but yeah, the Food House is I call it a record. It's not. It's obviously a food establishment, but for us, it was out of that pandemic, out of not being able to tour, an opportunity for us to do something else that we were also doing, which was cooking. That took off on Instagram. People love like seeing pictures of food and stuff like that. And then it became like me talking a lot about doing a food spot. One day, just a bunch of circumstances came up where I was basically forced to take the opportunities that were kind of presented to me, and I did it. And then again, because of the pandemic, there's opportunities for some people to potentially make new beginnings, and we're just taking advantage of that. While we can't tour, we needed something else to do. So that's what we're doing. And we did it, which is crazy because it was a lot of work. I always say, like, we have these interviews like this back in the day, or we would do music stuff. I'd always be like, oh, I'm busy. Or you hear people be like, oh, I'm busy. But like, I'm busy. Like, legitimately have no time to do things busy. I've never been this busy. I've never worked this hard. So, and I knew that was the case, which is why I always put it like aside, like, oh, I'll do it later, because I know the commitment of being a chef and cook and owner is, and I didn't take it lightly, but here I am, and so now I'm just kind of forced to do it.
I was just watching the first interview that we did for the Moody Black 3 EP, and at one point in that interview, you drew an analogy between a master athlete and an artist who has mastered their craft, and a cook. You were talking about dedicating oneself to a passion, and to have thrown yourself into, to have passionately thrown yourself successfully into creating Food House. How does it feel to return to that analogy that you were drawing before?
It's weird because it's the same thing. It's just, I just traded doing well, I'm not trading anything, because the music stuff is always, that's just there. It's always in my head. But I mean, I've become obsessed with the food thing of being better and being the best I can at the food, which I was always doing anyway. But now that there's a food spot, now I have like a place to put that energy, and I'm like, oh, well, I start to obsess. I don't think about it. It just starts happening, where I'm like constantly thinking of how I can make things better with the Food House and improve it. And because of that, like, I'm getting even more opportunities to do things with it. And it's just weird, because it's like, if you're passionate about things, I guess like it's just an effortless transition to the other things that you're passionate about. So it's like, it feels just like I'm making music. It's just, the only difference is that it's food and cooking. And the cool thing about the Food House is that it's easier to get people on board, because it's not crazy weird music. It's food that they can actually enjoy and have a good time with. It's easier to win people over with a good taco than a noise rap track.
Again, when we had our in-depth conversation about the EP, we focused on the blossoming flowers and the rotting teeth, and the together of those two images. We related that to how the black in Moody Black relates not to death and to terrible, bad things, but to the kind of disowned parts of oneself, with the cornerstone to Moody Black being not resisting these parts, encountering, embracing, allowing oneself to be transformed through encountering these parts. So it makes complete sense that there would be more things. Yeah,
You make more sense of it than I do. When you tell me things like that, it makes me see things that way as well, which is weird. That's why I like it, and I like talking to people, and really like talking to you, because it's like you can contextualize some things that, as an artist, like I don't really always think about, but when I'm told them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I was doing. Like you don't even realize it, like any artist that thinks that they know what they're what they're doing, I don't know, I just think that's a dangerous place to be. We have intent, but we also are like really naive and ignorant when it comes to our own work, and I think that that's why it's good.
that is why it's good. And especially if we're talking about encountering the shadow, there's an acknowledgement there that obviously, as important as being intentional with one's art is, there is more than the mind of the artist, this creator, puts into the art.
Yeah.
You referenced an encounter with a shaman from when you were young, and at the time you were transitioning from having basketball be your primary identity. You would use the word cornerstone. The cornerstone of Moody Black does acknowledge the potency of having an identity that involves embracing that which one doesn't identify with,
Yeah.
and transforming. So it makes complete sense to be skeptical about the artist's attempt to kind of fix the meaning of something.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's totally it. And it's weird because I'm learning now more than ever. I get caught up, and I've been caught up, and the pandemic helped me realize a lot of things that I was caught up in that I didn't like identifying myself as a musician and artist, and making my whole existence that. You become that. It's fun. It's like always telling you, I'm a character, and all that stuff exists, but the problem is you become that at a point of no, it's not a character anymore. You've now become this thing, for good, bad, or indifferent. And the KDEATH character isn't something that I think is something that anybody should wear all the time, because it's not. It gets too dangerous, I guess. It's weird, but I've had this awareness with the Food House too. I don't want to just be defined as an artist and musician. I think that's a really sad existence, and I've done that for a long time. And I'm trying to fight and get comfortable with not being defined by what I do. I'm not just a musician and artist. I'm not just a noise rep. I'm none of those things. I'm all of those things. I'm none of those things, but I'm also more so, what's more important is that I'm just a regular human being. We get caught up as artists. You talk to a bunch of us, and it's this huge ego and my art and all this. And I've been really confronting that, and I'm like, I don't want to be that anymore. I've been that, and I still am to this day. And I'm trying to convince myself to step out of that. And because I've done that recently, I'm where do I get my power from now? Because I bought into myself so much. It's weird. I know that sounds weird, but it's kind of wild to have that dissolve.
A few days before we conducted this interview, I happened to make a post about the genre noise rap. And you were clarifying in the post that when Moody Black coined the term, we were talking about an extension of the beautiful noise era, the 90s explosion of shoegazy, post-rock, etc., with a medium of heavy rap-based beats, usually driven by guitar, spacey, slow, heavy. Could we begin by just reflecting on the significance of the genre understood as such, and now a long way into the existence of Moody Black, having a record called FUZZ? The record name evokes a certain kind of sonic landscape.
Sure. When I started saying that, it was because I was getting influence from Jesus and the Mary Chain and My Bloody Valentine. Not that much. I didn't listen to those groups that much. I listened to even deeper stuff like LaBradford and Pan American and Spiritualized, the Spacemen 3, that were really, no one knew these post-rock bands. And then they had these shoegaze influences. My brother and his friend Big J, really cool friend of mine, also turned me on to. And that was the vein that I was making the rap music with, like, and so and that was closer to what Dialect was doing than anybody else. You go listen to Death Grips clipping, every other noise rap band, go listen to them, sound nothing like Moody Black's expression of what noise rap is. It's so much more enveloped and emotional and soundscapey, and has all these varying expressions of emotion that all the other noise rap just doesn't have in its work, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but it just doesn't have it.
Reading that post and re-listening to FUZZ on repeat in preparation for the interview,
Awesome.
that reference to shoegazy post-rock was very illuminating for me. And what you were just saying about the soundscape and the emotional significance of that. We were talking previously about the combination of this passion and the lack of a structure that is supportive. And this is perhaps, more and more the case. There isn't like a kind of an initiation path paved out. You get everything lined up and then you go through this process. And then I found myself thinking about this soundscape itself as a container.
As a container for what? As a container for like the genre?
As a container for being, for the evolving entity that is Moody Black. Because if you're performing, in character as kind of KDEATH, the thing that makes it not just like a display of ego is there is this kind of invitation, I think, in the sound, in this very emotional soundscape, to enter this kind of alternative realm where, maybe like KDEATH is kind of presiding there. It's a space of transformation. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I use the word container is because we're talking about form. The form of the music is the noise rap form.
Yeah.
As defined by you.
Yeah.
What is the significance of that form, perhaps especially in a live context? Because I think of Kevin Shields talking about the significance of the loudness of My Bloody Valentine, say.
Oh, that's easy. That it's what you just said. It's that again, it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't like I knew that in order to gain people's attention, you have to have that sort of sound. But I think what it does is that sound, the soundscapes that we work in, that Moody Black works in, that we've created and that we're known for, it's a way to get you out of your zone and allow you to get to our level. For an example, I'm a marginalized person of color, blah, blah. The same old things that people say, the buzzwords that people say, I'm that. But I exist in a way where I have an awareness that I am not that either. Like, and that's conflicting because I have this privilege of this awareness, and I consider it a privilege because I don't think everybody is able to see the world like that. Nor do I think they need to, nor do I think anybody's better or worse because they can or they can't. But because I have the ability to, and because I feel so ostracized because of it, because I feel like I'm disconnected a lot of times because of it.
Because of the awareness.
Because of that awareness, and because of the fact that I feel so ignored, I think the soundscape is just me willing myself to try to get your attention in the best way possible, which by proxy has developed this crazy sound because I've had to be this ridiculous and noisy and big just to get somebody to look our way. It's not frustration. I'm not frustrated anymore. It's just like, I want to show you my experience of my world experience, my perspective, my world, because I think if everyone could get to that level, we might have a chance to connect with each other. I think at the end of the day, it's all about connection. And we're so divided right now that it's going to take Herculean efforts on everybody's part to give a little and to get a little on everyone's part. That's not just one, I despise a lot of things that a lot of people do. But I also can find a way to try to have some sort of compassion to find connection. But I think that's that ability and all that, it speaks through like the music. That's a part of our ethos anyway. And again, only if you ask me, like again, this isn't a purposeful thought. This is only a thought that I went through in my brain and developed right now. It wasn't like something I purposely think. But I think that's the best way I could put it.
about halfway through the record, there's a few moments where the record is self-conscious about the genre of noise raps. Specifically, I mean, in I'm the One to Love, there's like, it don't even matter when the noise isn't popping. And then going into High V, even more so there's this piece of audio at the beginning that's kind of conversational.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reference to there being no point in kind of sitting there and blaming someone for something. We're going to go and see a live band. And then the way in which the instrumentation then comes in, more so than at any other moment on the record, there is this feeling for me of being, it's like being at a live show.
That's awesome.
There's an intentional kind of rawness and messiness to the way in which that is either performed or produced.
I'm the One to Love is a funny, like self-aware, egotistical song. It's not an egotistical song. It's a calling out the ego. I'm the One to Love is a ridiculous notion. It's mocking myself. But what's so funny is part of it's true. Like I have ego and I'm jaded and fucked up. This is true, yes, but it's not. At the end of the day, it's not the winning theme. It's saying that I know it's problematic and it's fucked up, and I don't want that kind of person in my life, and I'm that person at times, and it sucks. I'm the One to Love is one of the only songs where somebody else was actually helping with production on that breakdown part of I'm the One to Love, where the drums change. Jonas from Blackhearts, a friend of mine from Denver who was consulting on this record because I've reached out to people, and I didn't make him very happy. Because he puts me in my place and is like, this is. I don't know what you're trying to do. Like this is, the drums don't hit. But he's got a point. So there was a lot of that going on FUZZ, like a lot of like putting myself out there and wanting to get feedback from people that are respected and having to deal with being really humbled because I need that. And then High V, it does feel more like a live, kind of like a live song, like a live band song. High V is closer to what is happening now with like the newer work that we're working on. So a lot of the stuff is moving in that shoegaze direction, and I'm moving further and further away from rap, to be honest with you. I think anybody that's heard Moodie Black can kind of tell, and then especially with FUZZ, I think people are starting to get that vibe. As far as the live feel, that's cool, you got that, and that's really just field sampling myself talking on a microphone, but I didn't intend for it to have that vibe. It's funny, it was pre-pandemic. All the stuff on FUZZ was before the pandemic, and you hear a lot of themes that sound like it happened after that, which is really weird. It's named after the grocery store. I spelled it differently so people wouldn't assume that, because I love to go shopping. I love to go, but like then I'm shopping amongst Midwestern white people, and that's problematic as hell for somebody like me. It's just weird. But I'm talking about how I don't like to go out and I'm antisocial, and you probably know the hook better than I do. But it sounds like we're stuck in a pandemic. The hook. It sounds like how's it go? How's the hook go? You got to remind me.
Around here, we don't go out.
Go out much.
We don't
care for much. Yeah. So we're gonna dance. It's just and that's exactly like the pandemic. Like you had a choice. Like either you're gonna dissolve into drinking your woes away, which I did for about 3 to 4 months of it, or you're gonna like lift yourself up and get out there and say whatever, it is what it is, and we're gonna make the best of it, which I've done the last 8 months. But anyway, that song wasn't about that, didn't exist then. So it was like weird. It's just weird how this record kind of coincides with all that stuff that happened.
I think it does relate to well-being, and we were talking about the invitation for connection that the performance kind of creates. Going back to I'm the One to Love, there the vocal is I'm the one to love, I am enraged, I am all things are, and the I am all things, I think that's a really significant moment. So on the one hand, as you've been framing it, this delivery is ego. It's like your ego on the mic, I'm the one to love. And what I was trying to get at earlier is that the ego is an aspect of the anatomy, no matter whatever framework we're working within, whether it's psychoanalysis or whether it's we've got some kind of spiritual anatomy. The ego is a part of it, and for a person to deny that they have ego would be yeah.
You're supposed to though, as a good little artist. You can't talk about it unless you're Kanye or something. Then it's cool, or then it's a sideshow because you're nuts, which is not cool either. But I mean, I am all things is exactly where I've been living recently, and since that record, and probably forever, because I mean that's what we are. We're imperfect.
Yeah,
and
it's a
I don't
radical
think it's
acceptance, a radical acknowledgement,
yeah.
and commitment to integrating all aspects of the self. And so it might come across as very egoic. I'm the one to love. I'm enraged. I'm all things. But through not disowning these other would-be disowned parts, there is the possibility of kind of, to use a kind of Christian metaphor, a redemption of all parts. I am all things. And it's not like Chris, being the one that is all things. It's like unity consciousness, one could.
Yeah, exactly.
How significant is that throughout Moody Black and FUZZ in particular, and how things are evolving now?
I'd say more so now than ever.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't think it always was. I think like that's what I meant. You get caught up in like all these things. People would react strongly to things I said back in the day, and even now, if I say something just like the noise rap post, and I start to think like as an artist, I don't know what fans or musicians want, fans of artists want, like supporters, fans, listeners. We're always going to do things wrong. Like none of us can say the right things, do the right things. And a lot of us as musicians and artists, especially independent ones, especially noisier ones, you're putting your life out there and being very vulnerable. And somebody like me, especially, it's normal to personalize a lot of things online when you exist like that. And I'm guilty of that. And I can get better at it, and I should get better at it. But it's also like I shouldn't feel ashamed that I have these terrible. They're not even terrible, but I have these qualities that are, people say are terrible because we're artists. Like we're not allowed to have that emotion or to say that because you come across as pretentious or egotistical or who are you to. And that's not the case at all. You're just caught up in a moment, and then you post it, and then all of a sudden you have a reputation for being. And that's true to an extent, and I've gotten a lot better at that, and I'm trying to work on those things because they can affect you negatively if you allow them to take over, which I have in the past, and even some days still. Like I let that take over, and there goes a post at 2:00 in the morning or something.
It can affect you negatively if you allow them to take over. They can affect you negatively if you disown them and deny that they are part of you at all. Like rage,
which is most people.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
That's why they get mad when they see somebody expressing it, because I think that they feel they can relate to that, and they see it as a really negative thing.
So we're having a conversation not about behavior outside of the music. We're talking about the live performance, say, what's projected onto the performing artist in the act. The final track on the record is called Instant Meme Minor Purge. So there is a possibility here for a purging of some kind, but there's also the risk of being cast as bad, being shamed. Shame is a word which is in not every song on the record, but I'd say half of the songs on the record have the word shame in them.
Yeah.
What reflections do you have on how the shame theme in the record relates to non-acceptance of course, that's what shame is all about. This non-acceptance of the same parts and the desire for the musical artist when they're performing to simultaneously embody all of that, but then perhaps be deemed bad for embodying all of that.
This is the first time I've even thought about the fact that shame is brought up as much, but because it's what I'm learning is I probably still have a lot of trauma and shame
Yeah.
about being who I am. To this day, to this minute, I'm talking to you. To the minute that I'm hearing my voice, to the minute that I see my face on the screen and the disconnect of the face and voice. So there's a lot of shame that I grew up with, bearing certain selves or parts of myself. Again, it's not conscious. People think when they hear that, they're like, oh, I had to really tuck that away or hide myself. It's not really like that. It's kind of all happens subconsciously as you go through life, and you get used to it. You just grow up like that and you don't realize. I mean, I was doing a lot of things in private, so there's like the actual the actual shame of it, because you're taught that you shouldn't do this, that, or the other. And there's a lot of shame because people are making fun of or talking about people that you might relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the shame themes come up, because it comes up every day in my life. Like I feel uncomfortable being who I am because I've been told that that's bad. And no matter how comfortable you are with yourself or you work on yourself, there's still that feeling of shame. I can't shake it. I haven't been able to yet. Maybe one day will. But that's really what the shame, that's why that keeps coming up. If I'm writing something, it's going to subconsciously just come up.
The lyric about shames that really struck me is everything public in America is shame-filled.
Oh, yeah.
Everything public in America is shame-filled. So the pervasiveness of this kind of vibration of shame, that one lyric seems to be stating something significant about the cultural context.
It is.
Yeah. What?
Which is basically that. I mean, that's again the social media thing. Like, it's like there's no winning. Like if you share your truth on the internet, somebody's not going to agree with it, right? Like it's like there's so much shit out there. But then also you get shamed if you're definitely in a minority group. And when you're living in that reality every day, like I am, like I can go on the internet right now and just type in transgender on Google. Boom, shame all over the place. I think just something needs to change. It's way too overwhelming to figure out how to start changing that.
Drawing this connection between your personal experience and the broader picture, everything public in America is shame-filled. That's definitely something that's doing something.